When you smoke a pipe, you're killing innocent people.
'Twas a very dark and overcast day, and I was driving on my way to Ponca, Oklahoma. I had seen an internet ad for a Native American shaman, and for $100 you could go on a vision quest. And what? What? For $100 you can go on a vision quest. And you people calm down. If you're wondering at this point, have I taken leave of my senses? First of all, remember that I had seen a future vision of my dad collapsing and dying. And that's not something I could just forget and walk away from. Second of all, if you're a skeptic out there in the audience, I'll level with you. By this time, I had begun to doubt myself and wonder if I had really seen something or if I had just had a bad trip. I'd been spending a lot of time thinking about the dreams I had had, in particular the one where I saw my dad pulling the heavy sled behind him until he finally gave up and laid down on the ground. In this dream, my dad was dressed in Native American attire, which I had difficulty making heads or tails of because, as I had mentioned before, my dad just didn't go in for that kind of stuff. Not out of any real prejudices, but my dad was a straight-laced Jehovah's Witness elder. And, yeah, if you've been around it, you understand. It just goes without saying. The interesting thing about that was that my mom's job was, my mom worked at a museum for about 8 years. She was a tour guide and also helped research and set up exhibits, mostly dealing with Great Plains history, wagon trails, the Civil War, the Dust Bowl. But my mother's special expertise was in the horse riding era of American Indians. And over the years, she had actually accumulated a lot of Indian artifacts and also just some fun items and pictures. However, none of that stuff was allowed by my dad to ever come into our house or even be talked about in our house. As you know, JWs are extremely superstitious. They believe that any items which may or may not have some connection to a pagan culture, even something as paltry as a decorative pot, can cause havoc in your life, even cause Jehovah to leave you. The ironic part being that JW households are filled with Watchtower books containing satanic imagery. As we just saw in part 37 of this series, the Live Forever book contains tarot cards. Not some scribbled drawing depicting a tarot card. Actual, real tarot cards. It's like if Watchtower was having an article about pornography and put actual porn in the magazine. And you have it in your house and you show it to your children. What am I going to do with these people? 3 tarot cards in a row. The first one appearing to have a watchtower on it, which I found to be significant. After all, the Live Forever book is a publication that predicts the future, just like tarot cards. According to Wikipedia, the Tower card symbolizes catastrophe and failure. It may also represent the paradigms constructed by the ego, the sum total of all schemes that the mind constructs to understand the universe. The tower is demolished when reality does not conform to expectation. That's very interesting, isn't it, friends? The card may have originally been inspired by the Tower of Babel Bible story, in which God destroys a tower built by men to reach heaven. That's also very interesting, wouldn't you say? The second tarot card is the Lovers, which denotes choices and relationships. Placed in sequence after the Tower card, could that have been pointing forward to a certain religion's choice to have a relationship with a certain United Nations organization? I don't know. Calm down. Everyone calm down. The third card is Death. And the Death card does not symbolize physical death, but rather being caught in the inescapable. Dun dun dun. I'll just let you draw your own conclusions as to that, but yes, it seems very telling, doesn't it, friends? But growing up, yes, our house was filled with Watchtower demonica, but something as simple as an Indian souvenir or memorabilia was not allowed in our house due to its indeterminable origins. The most extreme example of that I can remember was, it was a Thursday night. We had 10 minutes until the meeting started, and my dad was in a hurry to get there. He had a part that night. But he had my mom stop the car in front of the Kingdom Hall and let us out on the street. And he had her drive home because in the trunk of the car was a box of... my mom was one of those ladies who would go to grade school and tell stories and do little presentations to the kids there. It was her job. She would be dressed up in 1800s pioneer clothing, and she would show them how they churned butter or whatever. I don't know. She was always visiting our classrooms, and on this particular Thursday night, there was a box in the trunk of the car that had tools that Native Americans had made out of buffalo parts. There was a buffalo bladder that they used for a water jug. There was bones sharpened into, I don't know, stuff that is just, tools. But my dad could not let that box enter past the force field of the Kingdom Hall property that began at the driveway. There's a force field there, friends. You didn't know about the force field at the Kingdom Hall? You see, there's an invisible field of Holy Spirit that borders the property line of the Kingdom Hall like a wall. Now, my dad was not an unintelligent man. In fact, he had a mind like an architect. But you see, when you're a Jehovah's Witness, you have to do that stuff in your mind to keep going. You have to always be doing little mental maneuvers to make sense of it all. And keep yourself reassured that this makes sense and you can do this. Invisible lines. Little dotted do not cross lines that you create in your mind. And you convince yourself that if you are able to make your way through life in between those predetermined little lines, you will earn your ticket into the new order. Each individual Jehovah's Witness has a tightrope in front of them. And they tell themselves that if they can walk that tightrope, not forever, just for a few more years, if they can walk that tightrope and hang on and keep their balance, they will successfully cross the finish line of life. This is the motivating mind game behind the extreme and sometimes mechanical actions of Watchtower followers. The plan is to navigate life without making a misstep of any magnitude and just keep up with Jehovah's organization. What does that mean, to continue keeping in step with Jehovah's organization? Thousands of little requirements that JWs have to keep their little hands and minds busy every day. Kingdom Hall meetings are interspersed with occasional Bible topics and even Bible reading, but the bulk of the time spent at these meetings is for discussing the requirements Watchtower Society expects of you, the JW. With this tidal wave of mental curriculums and the assurance that by doing these things you will attain everlasting life, Watchtower has produced generations of fanatical JWs obsessed with technical detail.
Ethan, there is currently a rumor that you are, quote, everyone's favorite apostate. Is that true, Ethan?
If you've been watching the Anon Dude 2 judicial videos, you may have noticed that the men judging him seem to be fixated on technicalities.
Ethan, you smoked a pipe.
You may have noticed that the JWs sitting in judgment of Anon Dude don't seem too concerned with whether he means well, or his heart's in the right place, or if he's a good person who basically does good things. But rather, they choose to fixate on minor technical infractions that may or may not have happened.
Ethan, you keep choosing your friend Dustin over Jehovah.
That is a difficult choice, Ethan. On one hand, you have a guy with a mustache named Dustin. On the other hand, you have Jehovah. I understand your difficulty in making that decision. The funny part is, when Jehovah's Witnesses accuse you of stepping outside the invisible line, and you say, yeah, but that's not in the Bible, they say, oh, it's in there. And you say, no, it's not. They will swear up and down that it's in the Bible. And when you say, show it to me, they'll tell you about some talk they heard it in. To which you say, read it to me from the Bible. Now, if this is an elder you're dealing with, what they're going to do is turn to some very broad passage that could mean anything and read it authoritatively, then apply the vague interpretation of that scripture to the pointed and very specific infraction they are accusing you of. Most commonly, when you defend yourself by saying, that's not in the Bible, it's not a Bible teaching, the elders will turn to Matthew chapter 24 and read, who is the faithful and discreet slave? And that covers everything. Here's the thing about the little rules Jehovah's Witnesses have created in their minds. There are hundreds of rules for you to obey in Watchtower publications, but there are thousands and thousands of little rules that somebody heard a circuit overseer say one time, somebody heard in a talk, or an elder mentioned it in a local needs segment. And all of these are compiled and included into the JW mythology. And it's like a tax code, the size of a phone book, and it gets bigger every year. Thousands and thousands of little unwritten rules. But here's the best part. There is no uniformity of enforcement. It's entirely at the elder's discretion. Or more often than not, it's at the whims and proddings of the elders' wives. Who said that? I'm kidding, friends. I'm not kidding. Viewpoints on these unwritten laws will variate from hall to hall, and even from individual to individual. Sometimes you will be watching a movie with one of your JW friends or listening to music with them, and they will be laughing with you, and it seems like they're enjoying it. And then all of a sudden, it's like an electric switchboard goes off in their mind. One of the invisible lines in their head got crossed. And it's like they had a stroke. And they will tell you to turn the movie off, and they will gather their things and leave. And at the next meeting, an elder will come up to you and talk to you about the choices you are making. I want you to imagine that you are a JW brother and you have prepared a Sunday talk. It's the best one you've ever put together. And you are scheduled to give that talk in 2 weeks. But between now and then, you decide to grow a beard. You're going for a new look. You're going to have a neat little beard. 2 weeks later, when you get to that Kingdom Hall, it doesn't matter what you were going to say up on that stage, because you're not going to say it, and they're not going to listen to you. Do you understand what I'm saying? You will not find the word pioneering in the Bible. You will not find auxiliary pioneer anywhere in the Bible, or the concept of fulfilling a quota by a specific deadline on a time slip you turn into an elder. But if you came up 1 hour short in your auxiliary pioneer service, if you got 49 hours instead of 50, you failed. And they don't thank you for the 49 hours of free volunteer labor. They want you to provide an explanation for why you failed. You know, I've come to believe that the expectations set by Watchtower are not arbitrary. I believe they have carefully researched and determined what is just beyond what is humanly possible for the average human person to achieve. Look, you can't pioneer without cheating. I've been a pioneer. You can't do it without cheating. You have to cheat. All pioneers eventually have to cheat. They want you to, because then they got you. And from that point on, you are compelled by guilt. And you don't worry about if the Watchtower is telling the truth or not telling the truth, because you're not telling the truth. Let me tell you something, friends. All JWs are hiding dark secret. They have some dark secret. Every JW, from children to the old ladies at the Kingdom Hall, all of them have some skeleton they're hiding in their closet. You lied on your time slip. You have a porn addiction, but you make up for it by putting extra money in the contribution box. If you are watching the Anandu 2 Judicial Committee videos and you're wondering, how can these men be so unconscionable? Let me tell you something. Those elders aren't thinking about who's the good guy or who's the bad guy here. Their minds are cluttered and filled with the invisible lines. They're so concerned with the invisible lines that they can't see past it to a bigger picture anymore. That's what the invisible lines are created for. To keep JW so intently focused on them that they don't have time to reflect on who they are or what they're doing or where they're going. Those elders sold their souls a long time ago to get where they are. And it's not that they're trying to see something a certain way. All they can see is the invisible lines. They're gone. It's over. And my dad's life was all about the invisible lines. Therein lies the doubts I was beginning to have about myself. In my dream, I had seen my dad looking very sad and pulling a sled. But he was wearing Native American clothing, which does not fit with my dad's lifestyle or personality in any way. And it occurred to me that perhaps my mind had correlated two completely separate parts of my psyche, as so often happens in dreams. And maybe this wasn't a vision of any future, but just a random run-of-the-mill dream. I came to another realization as well. The dream with the squirrel trapped in the oil spill. It dawned on me that I had seen that squirrel's face before. In New York City. It was the same squirrel that had been killed by the ash cloud on September 11th. The screaming, frozen look on its dead face, the black muck on its eyes, it was just like the squirrel in the oil spill. Apparently, that mental image lasted with me and was resonating in my subconscious all these years later. So, if the Great Spirit sent these dreams to me or not, I no longer knew. But that did not change them from being real. Even if the dreams were nothing more than synaptical firings of the human mind, oh well. The fact still remained that I had involuntarily been led down a certain mental pathway, and I wanted to know why.
Ethan, smoking a pipe can kill innocent people.
I continued driving to Ponca City, and when I got to the address for the shaman studio, everything was dark inside, and nothing was written anywhere. There was nothing in the windows. I went to the cafe across the street, and they said he was gone. I said, "Do you know where he went?" They said, "It's just a guy in a costume. Save your money." But I had come this far, and I wasn't ready to give up. So I kept going around places and asking people, and I found out that east of town is a lake, and at the far end of it is a woman that says she's a Cherokee princess. She also says that she can see the future. It took a little while, but I got directions, and I winded my way all around the lake to the far north end. And I came to a small grouping of 5 or 6 mobile homes, double wides, big ones, with neatly trimmed little yards. And behind one of them I saw a structure. It was a teepee, the biggest I've seen. It appeared to be built around a non-functioning utility pole, and it must have been 20 feet high. And I walked into the backyard, and as I approached the teepee, the door of it flipped open, and I saw a big, bright, smiling face. It was Ann Davis, a heavy-set woman with long brown hair and button-shaped eyes that sparkled when she talks. Ann Davis is a magical person, and we are still friends to this day. Although she doesn't have a phone or email, it's worth the drive because she always has a look on her face like somebody just whispered a dirty joke to her. And she's wonderful. I sat with Ann Davis and I told her about the dreams and why I came. And she said, "You need to get the finding out." And we went walking down a dirt road. At the point where the dirt road ended, there was a circle loop and there was an RV parked there. And she pointed toward it and I said, "That's the finding out?" And she said, "Go behind it." And I walked around to the other side, and there was nothing. It was empty. And I turned around, and I looked at Ann Davis, and she said, "Close your eyes and start walking." I said, "For how long?" She said, "Don't stop." And so I closed my eyes and walked out into the empty field. And let me just say that walking outside with your eyes closed is not as easy as it sounds. Every dirt clod I came across almost made me trip. But I kept going, and I kept walking, It must have been 45 minutes at least. Until finally, I encountered a gopher hole and fell down. And when I opened my eyes, I was sitting in an open prairie with nothing else around, nothing but grass and sky in every direction. It was just like a place I had been before when I was a little boy, and I had gotten scared by the monster on the train tracks. See part 3 of this story. And I found myself on an open plain, devoid of everything but grass and sky. Even the sun had been obfuscated by a blanket of gray clouds. And I stayed out there for a long time.
Ethan, I've already checked out many other religions. I even sat with a guru, and I can tell you, in my opinion, for a fact, that this is the only true religion. You're 19, I'm 44. You don't decide these things.
That's a logical fallacy, by the way, according to Awake magazine. When you can't discredit what someone is saying, discredit them as a person instead.
Ethan, was the person you talked to at United Nations an individual?
No, it was 3 people in one, like the Trinity. He said his name was Legion because they are many. He put the entire General Assembly of the United Nations on speakerphone. It was getting late now, and I started walking again. And I came to a road, and I started making my way down it. I didn't know where I was going, but I didn't care because I was looking at a beautiful sunset. It was beautiful, friends. Pinks and purples and violets, casting like a watercolor under a bed of clouds. Not long after dark, I turned around and saw headlights rounding over a hill. It was Ann Davis. She pulled her truck up beside me and told me to hop in. "Well," she asked, "did you get the finding out?" "Yeah," I said. The gray-haired man pulling the sled wasn't my dad. It was me. I could just forget and walk away from. Second of all, if you're a skeptic out there in the audience, I'll level with you. By this time, I had begun to doubt myself and wonder if I had really seen something or if I had just had a bad trip. I'd been spending a lot of time thinking about the dreams I had had, in particular the one where I saw my dad pulling the heavy sled behind him until he finally gave up and laid down on the ground. In this dream, my dad was dressed in Native American attire, which I had difficulty making heads or tails of because, as I had mentioned before, my dad just didn't go in for that kind of stuff. Not out of any real prejudices, but my dad was a straight-laced Jehovah's Witness elder. And, yeah. If you...
When you smoke a pipe, you're killing innocent people.
'Twas a very dark and overcast day, and I was driving on my way to Ponca, Oklahoma. I had seen an internet ad for a Native American shaman, and for $100 you could go on a vision quest. And what? What? For $100 you can go on a vision quest. And you people calm down. If you're wondering at this point, have I taken leave of my senses? First of all, remember that I had seen a future vision of my dad collapsing and dying. And that's not something which may or may not have some connection to a pagan culture. Even something as paltry as a decorative pot can cause havoc in your life, even cause Jehovah to leave you. The ironic part being that JW households are filled with watchtower books containing satanic imagery. As we just saw in part 37 of this series, the Live Forever book contains tarot cards. Not some scribbled drawing depicting a tarot card. Actual, real tarot cards. It's like if Watchtower was having an article about pornography and put actual porn in the magazine. And you have it in your house and you show it to your children. What am I going to do with these people? 3 tarot cards in a row. The first one appearing to around it, you understand, it just goes without saying. The interesting thing about that was that my mom's job was, my mom worked at a museum for about 8 years. She was a tour guide and also helped research and set up exhibits, mostly dealing with Great Plains history. Wagon trails, the Civil War, the Dust Bowl, but my mother's special expertise was in the horse riding era of American Indians. And over the years, she had actually accumulated a lot of Indian artifacts and also just some fun items and pictures. However, none of that stuff was allowed by my dad to ever come into our house or even be talked about in our house. As you know, JWs are extremely superstitious. They believe that any items to have a watchtower on it, which I found to be significant. After all, the Live Forever book is a publication that predicts the future, just like tarot cards. According to Wikipedia, the Tower card symbolizes catastrophe and failure. It may also represent the paradigms constructed by the ego, the sum total of all schemes that the mind constructs to understand the universe. The tower is demolished when reality does not conform to expectation. That's very interesting, isn't it, friends? The card may have originally been inspired by the Tower of Babel Bible story, in which God destroys a tower built by men to reach heaven. That's also very interesting, wouldn't you say? The second